And Purse Strings, well, I guess, what is it, August? So Purse Strings is talking all about stay-at-home moms this month and how to financially prepare yourself or just kind of be aware. And so that is our theme this month, which we're excited to dig into a bit more. So as you guys know, Purse Strings is here to provide this financial education for you. And when you're ready to go put things in transition, transaction, have questions, we have our top tier financial professionals willing, ready, and able to serve you. We call those our Purse Strings approved professionals, and Stephanie is one of them. And so Stephanie, we're so excited to have you on today. And if anyone's listened to our latest podcast, Stephanie was also on there talking about stay-at-home moms. So a bunch of good, juicy information. But today we're going to be talking about 5 super smart financial moves for stay-at-home moms to make. But before we dive into that, Stephanie, can we get a little introduction from who you are and what you do?
Sure. Thanks, Maggie. I'm excited to be here. Stephanie McCullough. I have been a financial planner for 25 years this month. I was so used to saying 24 years, and now I'm like, oh no, it's 25 years, isn't it? That's a long time. And it was a career change for me. So, do the math. So I do financial planning for professional women, mostly women on their own, but I do have a lot of married clients as well. I really discovered in the early years of my career that women kind of weren't resonating with what the industry was talking about for the most part. A lot of women had outsourced the finances to a man in their life with perhaps good or perhaps bad consequences, or they really weren't well served by people in my industry. So I kept thinking, there's got to be a better way to have a conversation that's meaningful and safe about money, because money touches all the most personal, intimate parts of our lives. So we got to talk about all that stuff, in my opinion, to have a good money conversation, which is why I resonate so well with Maggie and Dr. Barb on Purse Strings, because they really embrace that as well.
Yep, we love talking about it. We love owning our finances. We know, a man is not a financial plan. But sometimes if you are having a family and working together, somebody does have to stay home to watch the kids, because that's a full-time job in itself, as we're going to dive into. And so, 5 super smart financial moves. Let's just start with move number 1.
Yeah, move number 1 is it's kind of a don't, right? Don't feel guilty about having a say in the family finances. Yeah. So I didn't end up staying at home. I've been working. My kids are 20 and 23 now, but I have lots of friends who did at some point or other stop working outside the home. We all know they're working full-time plus, right? But not getting paid for it. And, I've had conversations with them, and I've heard things like, oh, well, it's his money. He can do what he wants with it, which is baloney. Or, I don't really feel, kind of that guilt, like, ooh, I shouldn't have an opinion because I'm not bringing in a paycheck. So let's just step back and revisit, right? The whole decision, okay, not the whole decision, but a big part of the decision to stay home with kids is a financial one, right? There are many people who can't afford to make that decision, right? Don't have that ability to live on one income. So it is an economic decision in that way. And even if the other parent, if you, the mom, does go back to work, you'd have to pay people to watch those little buggers, right? Yeah. Those cute little adorable children, right? That costs money to get care. Just because our society doesn't put a dollar value on what moms do doesn't mean it's not an economic value to the household unit. You are making a giant contribution. If you were not there, it would cost money to replace what you do, which we're going to talk about in another point. But all that to say, to try to buck you up to have this conversation, right? You should not feel guilty about understanding the family finances, having an opinion, having a collaborative relationship. And that doesn't, I'm not trying to shame anyone who has a division of labor in their household, right? Very often, like in my house, I do the cooking and the kids' doctor's appointments, and my husband does everything outside the house and cars, right? Like, that's a division of labor. It's totally fine. Very often, money happens with that division of labor, right? One spouse takes care of the money. And it's very important that both spouses at least be aware of what's going on. You don't both have to be sitting down, paying every single bill online, but big picture, because you're in this together, it's an economic and legal contract. You want to be informed, you want to be aware, just in case down the road, heaven forbid you have to take over, but also you should have a say in what's going on.
Definitely. And some of that division, like in your household, you've talked about, you've made clear, but, he takes care of the car, but, he comes home and says, we did have to do this. We will have to think about this in 6 months. I got the
Yeah.
overview. I got the message. We got the memo. But it doesn't mean, I have to be there with him, with the mechanic, all in the same room. But it's that communication that's so important, because like you said, staying at home is a different sort of money economic exchange. So number one is really don't feel guilty about having input in the family finances.
Yes.
So then number two.
So number two, I think is extremely important. You want to understand your spouse's, your partner's benefits that they get at work, right? So you might know how much money they make. Great. And I would say, paycheck, you want to know like the gross amount of the paycheck and then the net after taxes and deductions. Like that's good to know. But you want to know what else comes with the job, right? Because very often, especially working for a company, there's usually some kind of benefits, and that health insurance is a big part of that. But I'm talking about those other ones that people often kind of ignore: the life insurance, disability insurance, obviously like a 401k, a retirement savings plan, and there might be optional things that you might be able to do. Very often, there's a once a year, open enrollment for benefits where you can sit down, look through, review it anytime, really. We used to, in the old days, showing my age here, we used to have a benefit booklet. It was an actual physical book they handed out and you would read through it. Now, of course, it's all online, but there's somewhere that explains exactly what your spouse's benefits are. Most employees sign up that first week of work and then kind of forget what they have. But once you have a spouse who's depending on you financially, if you're not working, and once you have kids also depending on you financially, you need to know, because these insurances are kind of the safety net for if, excuse my language, I'm assuming I can say this word since it's in the title of your podcast, Maggie. If shit happens,
you can
if
say
shit
it.
happens, you need to know what you have to protect you. Life insurance, disability insurance, especially.
Definitely. And you go to work, 40 hours a week, week in, week out. You might as well know everything that you're getting for that labor that you're putting in. Especially, that first week when you start work, it's a tornado. You're doing 1,000 different things. So I'm sure you didn't pick up everything about your benefits, which is great that you can just access it online or, go to your HR department. But these things are so important because like you said, especially this insurance, but you want to make sure, you're fully funding your retirement because, then you have your spouse too. So it's a whole domino effect. And so you really want to make sure you're getting everything that you're putting in that labor for. It's not just
and I would say,
cash.
And if your spouse is self-employed or a contractor, like getting a 1099, or is deciding like to maybe start their own thing, leave a corporate job and start their own thing, benefits is something you have to take into account. Are you leaving behind a life insurance benefit that the company pays for, a disability benefit, a match on the 401k, even the opportunity to save for retirement every paycheck? Nothing wrong with that. You just want to take it into consideration with the decision. And then you've got to replace those benefits when you're out on your own.
You got to weigh it on both sides for sure. So definitely number two is you want to understand that working partner's benefits, which makes a lot of sense. You put in the work, you want to know what you're getting for it. So number three.
So number three is contributing to your own retirement account. Yes, you stay-at-home moms. So we think about a 401k, which you get if you work for a company and you can put money in. Well, stay-at-home moms don't have one of those. Then we hear about an IRA, an individual retirement account, which an individual can put money into every year if they have earned income. We've already talked about the fact that this culture doesn't, pay moms money for doing the work they do. So you don't have earned income. However, there's a provision in the Internal Revenue Code that says if your spouse has earned income, you can make a contribution to an IRA. It's called a spousal IRA contribution. So this year you can make $6,000 of a contribution, or if you're over 50 like me, $7,000. So that's something that's worthwhile doing. Because even if someday down the road, heaven forbid, you end up on your own, right? Spouse passes away, you should be the beneficiary on your spouse's 401k. Okay, that's an important thing to check back with the benefits too.
Right.
As beneficiary. Or, if you get divorced, assets should be split, but still it's an opportunity to save assets in your own name today. And okay, you don't have earned income, so that's going to be a conversation with earning spouse. Like, hey, it makes sense for us if I make IRA contributions every year. And you can do regular or Roth, and we can talk about that another time. But doing your spousal IRA contributions, you get a tax break for doing it. And it's one of those things that if you miss the window each year, it's gone. Like I can't go back and put money in for 2021 anymore. The deadline for 2022 is April 15th of 2023. So you have until then to make a contribution for this year, but it's really a good idea to do.
Yeah, it's a great tax benefit. It's a great way to just protect yourself, to have money in your name. But even, if you're both retired together, living a life of luxury, you both have those retirement accounts that have tax benefits. But like you said, you don't really get that time back. You don't get that opportunity with that the tax benefits. And as we know, investments, the best thing is time. So we want to, keep putting that money in while we're home, because we know those extra years are really going to help that exponential growth as well. So it's not just in case we get divorced, it's really the best option. If you're married, if you're divorced, you want the money in your name, all around great purposes. So yes, those spousal IRAs, we're all about them at Purse Strings. We keep pushing it because it is important to keep funding your retirement. It's huge. It's huge. Yeah. So that's a great number 3 of a super smart financial move for a stay-at-home mom. Number 4, which I am excited for this one because it's always the table turner.
Yes. So number 3, right? Contribute to your IRA, because down the road, if you're retired and having a nice life with your spouse, you want money. Number 4 is what if shit happens, right? Life insurance. Yeah, we talked about life insurance on the working spouse, and that makes sense because the working spouse bringing a paycheck, and that would be gone if he or she were to pass away. But what about if you, stay-at-home mom, were to pass away? There are little ones depending on all of your day in, day out hard labor, emotional labor, physical labor, organizational skills, right? Driving people around, for goodness sake, all the stuff that we do as moms. If you were to disappear, it would cost money for the family to replace that labor. That's what life insurance is for. It's a contract to protect against the financial risk of someone dying. Nothing is going to console your family. They're going to be wrecks, right? They'll get through. They're going to be emotionally distraught. But why add a financial crisis on top of the emotional crisis? Buy some life insurance. It's really not very expensive.
It's not. We're going to have another podcast come out about this. It's actually like such a good deal. It's unreal. But the other thing is, even if you have life insurance, check how much you're being insured for. I know this one story where this lady was insured for $150,000. That's really not that much. You are worth way more than that. Your job that you do every year, taking care of these children, and the 18 hats that you wear is worth more than that. And you want to, have a couple times your salary. A professional will help you figure out the magic number, but you want to make sure, even if you're taking the step to be insured, make sure you're getting enough insurance as well. It's like a 2-step process there.
Yeah. And, one of the steps you go through when you're trying to figure out how much life insurance you need is, well, what do I want to fund, right? What do I want this money to be able to do? Maybe you would love to have the kids' college education covered so that your spouse can maybe scale back a little bit on the work and take more time with the children. Maybe you have a spouse that works crazy hours, 80 hours a week, traveling all the time. If they want to scale back and do something a little less stressful, a little less time intensive, a little less remunerative when you're gone, having a pot of money available at your death would be really helpful with that. So it's that kind of unpleasant things to think about until it happens. And then everyone's so grateful that you did. That's
how insurance always works. You don't think you need it till you do. But that's how it works. And, we just want to make sure your family's in the best situation and taking the most proactive steps. So we've gone through a lot of great steps, but we still have one more super smart financial move for stay-at-home moms. And what would this one be, Stephanie?
So this one is for those people who might be listening and they're like, oh my gosh, there's so much. You've just told me so many things that I should be doing. Should, right? We should all over ourselves all the time. Yep. So the advice number 5 is just start the conversation. Just take a little baby step, whether it's you sit down with your spouse on the couch this evening, putting your feet up and saying, hey, you know what? I'd really like to start to get a little bit more informed about the money stuff in the household. Or, hey, you know what? Do we have any insurance on me? Because what the heck would happen if I passed away, right? we actually, on my podcast, which is called Take Back Retirement, we had a financial therapist on recently who works with couples and money. And we were asking, like, what's a good way to start that conversation for a spouse who's always been in the role where they're not doing the money, right? I've heard women say, my spouse will think I'm questioning him or thinking that he's not doing a good job.
Very accusatory.
Yeah, right? If I start to take interest. So, it might be a little bit of thinking through how to have that conversation. And I can't advise you there. I'm not a therapist, but I think it's still worthwhile. At the very least, talk to your friends, talk to your other stay-at-home mom friends, right? Hey, how do you guys handle the money? Because money is still the last taboo, and Purse Strings is trying to break that down, which I love. Talk about the money. Like, hey, friend down the street who's also a stay-at-home mom, do you have any life insurance on you? Or, how much life insurance does your husband have at work? Talk about the stuff, right? Starting to have the conversations breaks down that taboo, that kind of, social barrier, that emotional kind of worry about it. Start with the baby steps and, then you gain momentum. I remember someone, I'm going to have to remember who said this. So like they said, don't wait until you feel like doing something to start. Yeah. Start doing it. And then you feel like doing it more, right? Like you wake up.
It's like working out.
Yeah, exactly. I don't really feel like doing yoga today. But once you do the yoga, like, oh, that felt kind of good. Maybe I want to do it again tomorrow or next week, right? So start taking those little baby steps. Progress, not perfection.
Yeah, it's not all going to be done in one day. And we always have to remember that about anything that we do. But it is starting the conversation. And if you need a story, hearing about someone who had this happen to their family, and that's why you want to be part of the conversation now, I can call you and give you 30 stories, as terrible as it is. So sometimes it's just to start like that. If I heard the story and I want to make sure we won't end up like that. It's not from an accusatory position. It's just being proactive and smart and talking about these things. And I love, have a conversation with your girlfriends when you're at your kids' ball games or at Taekwondo or whatever it is. Where chatters, bring it up.
Yeah. Very often, like a spouse might be relieved. They might be like, oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed come open enrollment time for benefits. And I really actually don't have time. This is the working spouse I'm pretending to be right now, right? I don't have time to read through all that stuff and understand it. I really would love it if my wife would research that stuff and help me make an informed decision for the family. You might not know that, but they might be secretly wishing that, you were offering that kind of help. So remember, it's a partnership throughout.
It is. It definitely is. So let me just reiterate these 5 super smart financial goals or moves. So the first one is do not feel guilty about having input in the finances. You are doing an income job as well. 2 is understanding the working partner's benefits that they get from work. 3 is making sure you have your spousal IRA and are doing those contributions. 4 is you want to have life insurance and have enough life insurance as the stay-at-home parent.
Yep.
And 5, on you, exactly. And number 5 is to start to have these conversations. There's a lot of shoulds and coulds, but let's just get started today. It's a great day to start. I think this is
always a great day to start.
It's always a great day to start. Are there any, this has been great. Are there any last words that you want to make sure the audience hears before we sign off?
I always think, like, as a financial planner, right, when I sit down with my clients, we think about, what if things go right? What would we like the future to look like? And we try to plan for that. And what if things go wrong? And we try to, I make my clients walk through those kinds of conversations as well. So I think, if you're looking for the motivation to start to take these steps, these super smart money moves, if it goes right and you're an informed member of the household financial decision-making team, and maybe you then start talking more openly with your kids about money, right? Like, think about how all that could go well.
Yeah.
And then maybe part of the motivation is, like Maggie said, the stories, right? Like, we've all heard stories of women who all of a sudden spouse skips town and, oh, by the way, he spent all the money in his 401k. And he was, signed off on some crazy business deal that was on the tax return that, wife signed but really didn't understand. That's another one, probably. Look at the tax return. So there are some kind of scary nightmare stories too. And I'm sure that won't happen to you, but it happens to somebody. So again, it's best not to start these things when it's a crisis. Start when things are going well. It's
great piece of advice there. So thank you, Stephanie, for coming on today. You can always reach out to Stephanie at sofiafinancial.com. She's also one of our Purse Strings approved professionals, so you can check her out on our site, pursestrings.co. And we will be back here again next week with some more great information for stay-at-home moms. But if you have any questions, reach out, put it in the comments. We're always here for you. So thank you again, Stephanie, and thank you everyone for tuning in.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Maggie.
All right, bye.